You ever get that feeling that humanity is, well, on the brink of something big? A huge change, a completely new way of seeing the world and ourselves? Well, let's get right into that because that is the very heart of Eckhart Tolle's incredible book, A New Earth. His whole point is that we're at this pivotal moment in our evolution, not a physical one, but a transformation of consciousness itself. So Tolle kicks things off with this really beautiful idea. For millions and millions of years, plants just existed, without any flowers. And then bam, in what was a massive evolutionary leap, the very first flower blossomed. He uses this as a metaphor. Just like flowers were this transcendent moment for plants, he says humanity is now ready for its own flowering, a leap into a totally new state of consciousness.
But before we can get to that flowering, Tolle says we have to face what he calls the bad news first. He makes this bold claim that the normal, everyday human mind is actually suffering from a fundamental, deep-seated dysfunction. And it's not just a few people. He's talking about a collective condition.
Now hold on, this isn't about pointing fingers or blaming anyone. Tolle is really clear. This is not some personal failing on your part. He sees it more like a collective insanity that's been with us for thousands of years, a delusion we're all kind of born into. And what's really fascinating is, he wasn't the first person to see this. Not by a long shot. This insight is ancient.
All the great wisdom traditions have been pointing to this very same thing for centuries. They just use different words for it. In Hinduism, they call it Maya, the veil of illusion that we see reality through. In Buddhism, it's called dukkha, that feeling of suffering or just general unsatisfactoriness with life. And in Christianity, the idea of original sin literally translates to missing the mark, missing the whole point of being human. They all saw the same core problem.
And if this all sounds a little, abstract, let's make it real. This collective madness, when you add ideology and technology into the mix, it has terrifying consequences. Just look at the 20th century. Over 100 million violent deaths caused by other humans. That is the dysfunction made terrifyingly real.
So what is the root cause of all this? What's driving it? Tolle's diagnosis is surprisingly simple. It's a false sense of self that he calls the ego. You can think of it as an imposter living in your head, pretending to be you.
The ego, that's that nonstop voice in your head. The constant commentator, the worrier, the judge. It's the whole me and my story that we get so caught up in, what we like, what we hate, our past grievances, our future hopes. But here's the thing, according to Tolle, this mind-made I is not who you really are. It's just a conditioned, temporary pattern of thinking.
Okay, now this is the crucial part, the big secret. The first step to freedom isn't to fight that voice or argue with it. It's just to notice it. That's it. The very moment you become aware that there's a voice in your head thinking, you are no longer completely lost in it. The awareness that sees the thought is different from the thought itself, and that awareness, that's the beginning of waking up. So we're really talking about two totally different ways of being. On one side, you have the egoic mind, completely lost in thought, always needing problems and drama to feel alive, constantly chasing a future that, let's be honest, never really gets here. And on the other side, aware presence. This is being rooted in stillness, accepting things as they are, living right here in the now, and knowing that who you are is much, much deeper than any temporary label or form.
Recognizing the ego, that imposter, leads us right to the good news, the solution, the antidote. The way out isn't by trying to change everything out there in the world. It's by discovering this dimension of stillness that is already, right now, inside of you.
And stillness isn't just, the absence of noise. It's something much more profound. It's the very space in which all the noise and all our thoughts can happen. Tolle says it's our essential nature. It's that quiet background awareness that's always there, totally calm and undisturbed, just beneath the choppy surface of our minds.
And getting to this stillness is actually way simpler than you might think. In fact, you can try it right now. Just listen, not to the sounds, but to the silence underneath the sounds. Or notice the tiny gaps of quiet between your thoughts. Or, here's a good one, just pull your attention away from your thinking and feel the aliveness in your hands. Feel that energy? These are all direct doorways in.
And it's so important to get this. Stillness is not a passive, zoned-out state. Tolle makes it clear that this quiet space is the source of all real intelligence and creativity. When that noisy, chattering mind finally gets quiet, a much deeper, more intuitive intelligence can come through and give you answers that all your compulsive thinking could never find.
So this inner stillness is basically the entryway to the most practical, life-changing part of this whole teaching, learning how to actually live in the power of now.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Have you ever in your entire life experienced anything outside of this present moment? The past? That's just a memory you're having right now. The future? Just a thought you're having right now. The now is it. It's the only reality we ever get. The ego fights it constantly, but Tolle's advice is so simple. Just make friends with it.
This is such a great question to ask yourself. How often are you just trying to get through this moment to get to some better future moment? Whether you're stuck in traffic, waiting in line, or even sitting at your desk, this habit of treating the now like an enemy you have to defeat is one of the biggest reasons we feel so much stress and unhappiness.
So what do? The practice is simple, but it's also pretty radical. It's all about acceptance. Tolle calls it surrender. Now, that doesn't mean being weak or giving up, not at all. It's a wise, powerful choice to align with the reality of what's happening right now. It's about giving an inner yes to what is, and that frees up a huge amount of energy that you were just wasting on fighting and resisting.
Okay, so we've talked about the personal shift, right? But what happens when this inner change, this move from resistance to acceptance, from being lost in ego to being present, what happens when that starts happening to a lot of people? Well, that is the grand vision of this book.
And this brings us right back to that flower we started with. This personal awakening is the seed for a global one. Every single person who shifts out of that egoic state of mind is contributing to the flowering of human consciousness. And that is what creates what Tolle calls a new earth.
And look, this isn't just some nice, fluffy, spiritual idea. Tolle presents this with a real sense of urgency. When you look at the destructive power of the collective human ego, he argues that this shift in consciousness isn't a luxury anymore for a few people meditating on a mountaintop. It's an absolute necessity for our survival as a species.
And in the end, the entire teaching really boils down to this single, powerful idea. We spend our whole lives trying to rearrange the furniture of our lives, thinking that if we just get it right, we'll finally be happy. But true, lasting peace, that doesn't come from changing what's outside of you. It comes from the profound, life-altering realization of who you are beneath it all, the timeless, formless awareness in which your entire life is happening.